Welcome to Spirit Baby Radio. I am your host, Kelly Meehan, a citizen of the universe and a passage keeper and mentor for our new Earth children. I believe we are entering into a new psychic structure of our reality, and it is meant to embody deeper trust and ways into solid self-love and fearless integrity. Our new world energy of spirit babies needs us to consciously create within conception, trust pregnancy, and have freedom to birth and parent from innate wisdom. This is Spirit Baby Radio. Welcome to episode 198, Holistic Healing for Conception into Birthing, Creating Healthy Mothers and Babies Before Life. How do you create a holistic conception into birth? What can you do for immune system support and living your best life for motherhood? How can you be seen from a holistic view? I have a special guest here. I know her as Vanessa, Dr. Vanessa. We go way back, and I always like to go into how do I meet people? Because I have a very strong invitation only for Spirit Baby Radio. And we met, our kids were together in a Waldorf charter a million years ago. And we knew each other, kind of. And Topanga, we know Topanga because you lived in Topanga.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that was fun. I loved going to school and seeing you at school and our kids being at school together. And I loved that school.
Yeah.
Until
Vanessa checked out earlier than we did for homeschooling. And she wasn't the only one, actually. There was a lot of our class left for homeschooling, which is very fascinating, right? It's a whole other conversation.
Yeah.
Let me read your bio, and then we're going to kind of jump in. There's a lot of things I feel like we're going to kind of go into. Dr. Vanessa, for the past 25 years, has been in private practice helping people navigate chronic illness and autoimmunity. Her roots began with a degree in chiropractic, and she went on there to get a master's in traditional Chinese medicine, became a certified clinical nutritionist, a certified autoimmune protocol coach, and is a certified functional medicine clinician. Having witnessed the best and worst in healthcare, she's a fierce advocate for medical freedom and informed consent. She's a founding member board of Options for Life, a nonprofit that funds integrative oncology care for patients seeking an alternative course of treatment because being broke and sick can feel hopeless. She sees people in person and remotely and is currently constructing a series of courses to help people DIY it with functional medicine for Hashimoto's, thyroidism, gut health, and autoimmunity. Her greatest joy is being a wife to Greg and a mother to Zoe, whom she homeschools full time. Yay! I love
Yay.
that. I love that.
So good.
Yeah, to me, you're the autoimmune expert. And I know that's a big area. And we're going to go into that too, because maybe that even interlinks with fertility. And this is a big topic. And I know energetically and counseling people around the world that I do see a pattern, not just with fertility, not just the women and their eggs, right? Also the sperm health. And I want to hear what your thoughts are about maybe even I can't even say what causes all this infertility, right? I mean, that's a big topic, but what have you seen and what you've learned over this time with working with many others that have maybe on a fertility journey?
Well, it's for sure not just one thing. So we have to sort of start with that. It's definitely a multifactorial situation. And that stems from, for sure, environmental factors. And that could be everything from what we're inhaling, what we're ingesting, what we're injecting. Um, and, a lot of this too, just like I mentioned right before we got on the call, that people really don't take into account for how debilitating it can be, but is blood sugar instability and metabolic patterns. I mean, you have a ton of women right now that have PCOS, right? And which is one of the major drivers of infertility. So, it for sure isn't just one thing. However, I would say stuff with the environment has definitely been ramped up in the last 20 plus years for sure.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. I know that we're always trying, the women I see, they're always trying to find that one thing, right? Maybe you see that too. It's like, well, just give me this one thing. Give me this one piece and then maybe it is, but it's like layered with so many different parts um and that's why I like the holistic view, right? It's like that's how you're addressing it. You're looking at that
Yeah,
holistic.
you're so right. There is sort of this always, give me the one thing, and a lot of women, especially when they're so desperately wanting to have a baby, they're sort of on this fast track, right? And if people could just take a pause and say, I'm going to take the next 6 to 7 to 8 months or whatever to sort of make this biome a home
Mm,
for conception. And what are all the things that I need to do? What are all the systems that I need to sort of prepare for? But that's not, there's always this notion of like, your clock is
yeah.
ticking, you know, right? I mean, or if you're 35, right, your advanced maternal age. I mean, I don't know what the statistics are, but last I heard, I think the average age for a woman giving birth out of Cedars-Sinai was like 40 years old.
Mm,
So, there's always this sort of push, and it doesn't really leave a lot of room or space for um, creating an environment for conception.
when you say that, it makes me think about like you want something from Amazon. Sometimes it can come within 24 hours, or we're such a like get it done quick manifesting society.
Mhm.
And I think there's a power in that because we are very creative, strong light forces, but also the patience and the internal terrain you're talking about is like really navigating through the maybe the unhealed or wounded parts emotionally, physically, spiritually that they need their own time, right? And I've seen that with women come to me. Oftentimes I'm like, please don't come to me if you're like 1 month in and you're like, I had tried a month and I can't conceive. I'm like, I don't want to hear that because what does that even mean? Like that you
Mhm.
have to watch that mental energy. That feels dangerous to me if somebody's questioning that after a month or two. And I love how you shared it. Felt very compassionate and loving, like giving ourselves permission. Well, look, a few months. And I love doing that with women in session space. Like, let's go on, let's prepare. Let's prepare everything. And I do see really positive outcomes. I don't know about you when there is that that space, not like I gotta go push, I gotta go do. I'm not anti-intervention and fertility, and everybody knows that, but I'm also like there is an abuse that happens with I'm on my 10th IVF round. Yes, I've had women come to me like that. And I'm like, whoa, whoa, to me, it's dangerous. And also, how is a doctor letting you even do that? Like, that feels like malpractice because your body now is like, what is happening? You're trying to force something. But like you're saying, like, what if there's the terrain is like kind of needs more help to like
Mhm.
create the balance. I don't know if you've seen that, but I actually have had women, I call it like kind of intervention abuse with fertility treatments because look, it's so available now, right? It's like,
Mhm.
hey, oh, you want your baby? But the percentages I found out through with fertility specialists are actually quite low.
Mhm.
It's like,
Yeah, I mean, there's always the dangling carrot,
hmm,
right? And that I mean, just going back to exactly what you were saying about preparing the terrain, y- you know, it, you can never go wrong making lifestyle choices, changes, moving in different trajectories, right? That sets you up for the whole rest of your life.
mm,
So regardless of what happens with being able to conceive or not, or having to sort of walk away or choosing to adopt or whatever the case may be, um, making solid changes, it sets you up for the rest of your days on the planet, you know? And I think that's really valuable. And, it takes several weeks to months to change certain patterns.
Mm.
It isn't, an Amazon drop ship experience, right? It does. And it's can be frustrating, and none of it is ever linear, right? And there's a learning curve, and like that's just how it is.
Mm. Making me think now, when I was on my conception journey, years before, I wasn't sure I was going to become a mother, honestly, because I was sick in my
Mhm.
late 20s with autoimmune. I was diagnosed with lupus at the time, and I was just really suffering. And the doctor said, here, take some anti-inflammatories, which made me sick to my stomach. And I did that. I was like, oh, this is not working. And what I decided to do is get a credit card and start moving into Eastern medicine. And just, I was like, I don't care if the insurances aren't going to pay for it because they don't pay for any of my holistic stuff. So I like gave up on that.
Mhm.
And I met this woman who did massage and acupuncture, and she was a nurse, and she did herbs, and she helped me really eliminate like huge detoxing. Now I realized major detoxing, but at the time I'm going to the doctor and they're like, okay, this is your diagnosis. I'm like, that's what I thought it was. And then I would go get a Frappuccino. I'm
Mm.
serious.
Mhm.
Santa Monica near Barnes and Noble. And that was like my breakfast. And there was not one conversation about, hey, what are you eating or what do you exercise, whatever. Actually, I did have one doctor say, your body hurts because you're exercising, because you're wearing athletic clothes right now. And I was
Mm.
like, alternate reality for a moment. I'm going, is this guy fucking kidding me? Like, I'm hurting my body, my joints, my body was swollen. I just didn't feel I had pain in my like rib cage, which I thought was my spleen. Nobody knew. And it was just my body was so inflamed. And then I thought, oh, okay. This is why women come and they go, well, I have an autoimmune issue and I can't have a baby. And I'm like, that's not true. And I was on a very long journey for healing. Like it wasn't, I mean, years, because I didn't have, I had to clean out a lot of stuff, let's say, and I was young
Mhm.
enough to do it. And then I came to 35 and I thought, oh, let me see how conception is, and didn't have any massive issues. Like, my son came, I think in appropriate timing. It wasn't like within months, but I think it was like 8 months later after I started trying. And I was like, okay. And I had no autoimmune symptoms at all. Like they just didn't need to be there, I guess. Maybe I healed it, or I worked many, many years, but I know there are women that are going to be tuning in that's going, shit, like I have a thyroid issue was a big one, right? Or and sometimes they get so focused, like that's the reason. And I feel like it's more than that. But maybe that is what have you seen? What do you think?
I mean, I have a thyroid autoimmune issue, and I
Okay.
found out, that I had that prior to getting conceiving with my daughter.
Okay.
And just by accident I found out, right? Because the thing with autoimmunity is it happens in
Mm.
stages. And, the first stage is a silent autoimmunity where you're making antibodies to a certain tissue, but you don't have any symptoms yet. And you can stay in these stages for years,
Mm.
right? Um, so, that's kind of where I was at. I was in a stage 1 Hashimoto's. I didn't have any symptoms. The beauty of that, like the beauty is just understanding what you have, right? Understanding that you are making antibodies to certain tissues. And, what that really means is it's like your body's trying to eradicate your own tissue as if it's a virus or bacteria. And, when you know this ahead of time, you can really start to kind of pave the way for implementing certain lifestyle diet, nutrition, lifestyle modifications so that you can put the stuff into remission. It's not a death sentence. I mean, autoimmune
Mm,
disease is not, I mean, listen, some are way worse than others.
mhm,
Okay. But really, it isn't a death sentence. I think the tragedy that's going on right now is it's exploding, right? You can have people that have layered multiple autoimmune diseases because once you start making
mm,
antibodies to one tissue, it's like really super easy for you to start making antibodies to another tissue, right? So there's an
mm,
underlying inflammatory process that's taking place just with the autoimmune disease itself. And really, there's nobody in the healthcare model right now that's guiding people towards taking care of that, right? There's no autoimmunologist in the healthcare field right now. So, if you have lupus, you're sort of funneled to the rheumatologist. If you
yes.
have Crohn's, you're funneled to the gastroenterologist. If you have Hashimoto's, you're funneled to the endocrine. You know what I mean? And these people aren't looking at other autoimmune diseases outside of their respective fields
Mm,
as if the body's a communicating network system, right? It's like these people, the best and brightest among us, okay, who spend 10 years studying intensely, a two square inch area of the body and not, you know, and, and like knowing everything inside and out about, that 2 square inches or whatever that section,
mm,
but not really understanding that these sections are networking with the rest of
mm,
us, right? We've really got kind of done a disservice in terms of being funneled into this compartmentalizing all of our body parts. That's what's happened in medicine right now. That's sort of where we're at. And but yeah, ultimately it isn't a death sentence, and there's so much that can be done just from a diet, lifestyle, perspective on how to really help put this stuff into remission, um, and help women have really healthy pregnancies
mm.
with autoimmune disease,
There you go. Yeah, there's been a few women throughout the years that have come and because I'm tuning into the energy field. And when I hear them go into this autoimmune conversation, a lot of times it feels like there's no resolution, like they're looking for resolution. But it also feels like a lot of the ones I'm thinking about is it's almost like a guess. And the thing that scares me about the guess is they're like, try this
Mm,
medication. And sometimes it's over a $10,000 medication, this one woman shared,
mm,
and it didn't work. And, my place in this space is yes, I can see the energy and timelines, future things even, but I also am trusting the person to go, you have to make the intuitive choice. What direction do you want to lean into? Because sometimes we feel like we need something physical, right? Something cut, something removed, something, but I feel like it's too much. I don't believe all people need to do mitigation, cut things out, and then say, like, well, how come I'm not better? Why am I not fixed? Right. Especially see like endometriosis. It's like, well, they took it out. Now it should be fine. And it's like you have to really do the research and go, well, if they're taking away they can be creating scarring. It's like things like that, not to scare women, but it's like, oh, and you don't know how your body is. Like maybe your body's more prone. Like you won't know that. And we do have to take risks and gambles at times, but I feel like we have to then go, okay. So I hear these women saying a lot of the doctors say they have killer cells
mm.
and the cells want to kill their baby, right? And this is what a woman wants to hear. But I was like, but is it true? Is it not true? Are our bodies like I do feel like if our bodies are made for conception, female, womb bodies, then why would our bodies kill something? Well, I don't know. I mean, that's like a big conversation, but I that's where I go with it.
I mean, a lot of the stuff that I see is once you start going down the medication
Mm,
road, and there are certain situations where medication's going to be appropriate. I
mhm,
mean, if you have, let's just say, a thyroid problem, because I have Hashimoto's,
mhm,
right? At some point, the autoimmune process itself is going to destroy the follicular cells in the thyroid gland, and you will not be able to make thyroid hormone anymore.
mm,
And at that point, once that happens, thyroid hormone replacement is a necessity,
mm,
right? It's like you don't want to throw out the baby with the bathwater. What I see that gets people tripped up is that if they do not address sort of the underlying autoimmune process, right? Because I'll just take Hashimoto's just
mhm.
because it's sort of what I have and what many women have, and why it's
Too.
another road to sort of infertility, right? Is
Mhm,
thyroid problems. If you don't, the thyroid gland itself is sort of a victim of an autoimmune situation gone haywire, right? And if you can't go in and sort of address the underlying autoimmune process, you're going to have a honeymoon effect with the thyroid medication, right?
mm,
It'll be like you get on the medication, and for 6, 7, 8, 9 weeks, or however long this window lasts, you're going to be feeling terrific. But you
mm,
never went in and addressed,
mm,
right? Well, is this a gluten dairy issue?
mm,
Do you need to
mhm,
be on a paleo diet? How's your sleep? Are you exercising? Are you in antioxidant depletion mode?
mm,
Do you have enough, essential fatty acids in your diet? Like all of these things. How's your stress? Like if you don't go in and sort of untangle that web, right? The medication isn't going to do shit for you.
mm, mhm,
You're going to keep it. It's like all of a sudden the honeymoon phase is over, and now the symptoms are starting to creep back in that you had before. Well, now you've got depression. Now you're
interesting.
getting, you know what I'm saying? Yeah, it's like it's vitally important, and that this is sort of the tragedy that's going on right now. Medicine is like nobody's going to sit down with you and tell you this in your medical appointment, in your
Mm,
15-minute doctor's office visit. Nobody's going to kind of counsel you through, let's figure out if you're having gluten sensitivity, or let's figure out if you need to be on a paleo diet, or I've had to put a couple people on a carnivore diet, like full-blown you know what I
mm.
mean? There's no one perfect diet for every human, but I'm just saying, like, you've got to get this underlying inflammatory process sort of dialed in, or you're never, ever, ever going to be well.
I actually just really appreciate how you said that, and that felt so clear. It's like, I especially with thyroid, what I've noticed in many, many years with a lot of friends and clients who have thyroid issues, the medication can be really amazing. But you're saying it's like the other parts. It's like, I'm just going to do the medication and not do anything else. And then you're like, oh my God, I'm sick or I don't feel good. And I do see that too with people. Like, oh, I'm going to go eat the stromboli or the gluten. And it's like, well, maybe that's not a good idea right now till you could figure
Oh,
out. But I do,
man.
it's like, and to me, when I see that part, I think of the emotional addiction, right? Of like, well, I need that. And I know when we're cleaning out our bodies, as I did many years ago, it's always very hard in the beginning, but then you get to a point where it just feels good to eat good. Like it's interesting. It's like you change the palate. And I'm sure with fertility, I see a lot of women who are dealing with a lot of infertility. They do start with food and lifestyle change, which is excellent. I say, I'm like, great, that's the stepping to then move into the next part, which I think is when they come to me. Let's go into the emotional energetic. But I do also want to share with thyroid energy what I've seen across the board, like 100%, is it's usually connected to a lineage. Like it
Hmm.
comes through from a past, whether it's the life of the family, and I always can map it through. And I'm like, oh, this is interesting. Your mom or your grandma or someone else comes up and it comes through the lineage. I call it an energetic lineage. And that I'm not gonna like say it like it's really friggin' hard to heal those things that when they go deeper, because it's like you came in with a potential for deficiency, let's say, and then it shifts, right? And we do have to use, and then when the environment is intense, right? And energy and EMFs are intense, guess what? That already weakened energy field is gonna just sap out, right? And then we do these things like I like, the physical and the herbal and meds or whatever. And you're making me even think about like when I'm taking those anti-inflammatories and drinking the Frappuccino, guess what, Vanessa? I was still sick.
Yeah.
And I didn't know. Like I was like in my late 20s. I didn't know. I was like, no, I didn't know anybody to know to like help me until I found that one woman. And then I went deeper into realizing that um I like knew with 100% of my heart that Western medicine can absolutely not do anything for this. And like, what do you want to do with that, Kelly? Because it felt like at a time it was really pushed and very surrounded in my environment. And I said, well, you're just gonna have to go off on your own and try to figure it out. And it was my best healing to move into that and then get other people throughout the years when I needed support to not just look at one part of me. And I know we've talked about this, Vanessa. I have, and my community knows this. I'm very highly skeptical of medical intervention, Western medicine, because I've been abused by it from a child, like poked and prodded and IV'd, and I was on IV therapy as a teenager, like I was sick and nobody knew what was happening. And I think this is a big piece, is I wasn't told like, hey, you know what, Kelly, we're going to touch your arm right now. We're going to put a needle in it. You know what I mean? There was no
Oh,
consent. And people don't
right.
realize like, oh, well, that's silly. But what it has done to my body over these years and where my energy goes in those environments is not good. And I'm
Mhm.
still working on it at 49 years old. Like there's a somatic experience that happens in my body because my layers of my past are like, this is dangerous. This is not safe. And that's the creative piece that gets created and is why I home birthed.
Mhm.
Almost my first, second, and then I do everything natural for the kids, everything. I always say Dr. Mom first, everybody else second. And this frequency that I've created and have allowed, and I know others can create that frequency too, is we never have to run and do any Western medicine actually at all. So,
Yeah, what you're saying is so powerful, Kelly, because I mean, it's sort of layered into a couple different things. First, there's just been a disintegration in Western medicine. It's disintegrated. And especially with what's happened from the last, few years, the
yeah.
whole medical industrial complex, and there's really a lack of trust. They they blew it, you know. Um, but the other piece too that, you know, I I can so relate to what you're saying is, y- you know, it's hard for people to even wrap their heads around the fact that, you can have a child who's almost 14 who's never taken an antibiotic,
Mhm.
right? I mean, it's like unheard of. And I mean, Zoe's going to be 14 at the end of the month,
Mm.
and not because I'm some, Christian scientist, and I have nothing against that at all, but it's because we've never needed to go that route. Had we needed to go that route, I would be grateful for, because sometimes you do need to go that route. But it's everybody's first line of defense is,
Mm.
and it's like when people find out that you can make it through life without like
It's pretty
massive,
amazing.
yeah,
It's really,
right?
like you said, our own health authority, our medical freedom, our health freedom. And I know we didn't touch a lot on that, but that is a huge area. I felt like when I met Vanessa, she was very outspoken about medical freedom and with children, and at a time where people were like, what is this crazy lady? Push her in the corner. Now everybody's like, we're worshiping you. You were right. Like, what's happening? Like, it's crazy, really.
You
But
know what? I have to tell you, you met me at such a weird, funny, weird time because it was a time when they were forcing a lot of parents out of the closet.
yeah.
And,
Yes.
and prior to this time, everybody just sort of went to school. The kids went to school and nobody knew anybody's status.
Mm,
You just, right? There wasn't, and, like the pharmaceutical companies basically with these sort of weird laws, they really did push a lot of parents out of the closet. And, prior to this, I was very happy being in the closet. I'm a very private person.
yeah.
I was never on social media.
Mm.
It just it just it wasn't my thing, you
Well, I'm
know?
glad you got pushed out of the closet, to be
I know
honest.
now,
Yeah. Yeah.
but I have to say it's so funny because during that time, I went through a period of like I was an asshole. It's just like I didn't know how to be out of the closet.
Mm.
I didn't, it just like got very loud and sort of
Mhm.
almost in your face a little bit because I was like, wait a minute, do you know what's happening? And
Passion for that. Yeah.
yes, right. And once they opened up this sort of Pandora's box, it was just like, well,
Mm.
you went and did it now,
Yeah.
you know? And now you can't go back,
I
you
think
know?
in the pandemic went after that, like during that, after that happened, I think it really, I think we know a lot of people have really woken up to like, wait a second. Like even people
Oh,
that would have never have questioned medical anything. I think it's interesting what the world needs to see the corruption and to really question our own health authority. And medical freedom is the right of people, and people know that I do believe that. Like if you want to go and do things to your body, nobody should tell you that you shouldn't. Like it's all up to you. And it's interesting how I feel like we've opened some huge portal.
yeah. I mean, that time though, when we were at our old school,
Yeah.
it was pre-pandemic and just the laws that were getting pushed here in California.
Yes.
And it pushed a lot of like parents that were in the closet out of the closet, and we had to get very vocal. And then, what happened right after that, right after we quote unquote lost, and I
Mm,
pulled my kid out of the school system,
yeah.
then we got shoved in our homes with COVID.
Yes.
So it was like for me personally, I was already coming down on the heels of just like
Yeah.
driving up to Sacramento, like talking to legislators,
Yeah.
protesting, and then all of a sudden, like COVID hit, and I was just like, I just thought I'm not going to have any friends if if I keep doing this, you know. But what happens when when you're trying to push a narrative and you shove a bunch of people in their homes? Well, then
Yeah.
they start researching on their own. And
Yeah.
it's okay to ask questions.
Mm.
We are allowed to ask questions.
Yeah, and that's huge because, as we talk about infertility and the intervention, it's like I tell women, like, really just don't do things just to do them, and understand that where you go to a fertility clinic, whatever their scope of practice is, like that's what they do. So they may try and do things with you that may not work. And, again, there's such pressure for intervention more now than ever. And, now we're going to move from fertility to pregnancy. Let's talk a little bit pregnancy even, and nourishing the pregnant body, and then birthing. And
Mhm.
we, even bring it back to what you said. It's like, yet again, there's tons of intervention in birthing. And I'm a very big advocate for what I've seen, and I've heard midwives and medical doctors confirm this with me is the go-to thing now is inductions. They're
Mm.
all like a high percentage of them are unnecessary. And I don't want someone to go, well, no, you're wrong. I really needed my fine. If you want to hold that cozy frequency, you needed that induction. But most women, they don't. Like, what, how did we forget how to give birth all of a sudden? So now everybody's being induced because everything is dangerous. And this is why, I work with the intuitive, the energetic. I'm like, is this really true? And I've been working with women in free birthing. And I know some people are just like, whoa, what is that? It is a frequency we have to have here. It doesn't mean you have to go do it. Because I know for me, I need a woman for my lineage and the energy of what I've been through. I need a woman to help me birth. I really do. And a free birther would say, no, you do not know. I was like, no, no, that's just not me. Like, I know my wounds. But like
Mhm.
these women that are doing it with their partners and, with amazing outcomes, and there's a few maybe not such amazing outcomes, but there's so much to that story. And there's too much intervention in birth, there's too much intervention in the babies after they're born, right? And this is kind
Mhm.
of kind of keying into what you're going into, is that unless there's some obviously deep medical issues, which I would say all depends, but like not everything is this emergency, that children can be born without injections and slabs and, suctions and all this stuff. Is like, what I look at it from the birth psychological perspective, that foundation is everything to who we become in our personality. And so what are we doing? And it's not about shaming women for the mistakes, because my firstborn was this crazy chaotic, and I'm like, oh my gosh, what deep healing we're gonna have to do on this one to
Mhm.
heal but it's also like, what can we do to create that really natural space as best as we can?
It starts preconception. I mean, the most important thing we can do really is get your microbiome intact.
Mm,
Really, really, really care for your body preconception, knowing, right?
mhm,
Get a diverse biome going, right? Take the time that you need to sort of make a home. And, you know, once I was just telling you right before the call, right, that something that's occurred to me over the last year. Um, and I think we probably had our babies right as the onset of this was starting to ramp up, but there was a time when pregnant women were off limits,
mm,
okay? And we didn't tinker around with pregnant women's bodies, right? We they weren't it was like they were sacrosanct,
mm,
right? And what I saw sort of probably starting in my pregnancy, so it was starting to ramp up then, but now it's just I can't even believe what I'm seeing, right? Is you know what they're the things that shall not be named, the liability free products that now all pregnant women need.
mm,
Okay. Right, it's like you've got to get your Tdap, you've got to get your flu, you've got to get your
mm,
right. It's like, wait a minute, like that was never ever a thing, right? And then it became like the safest thing in the world. And what I find to be so outrageous is just going through a pregnancy and you're told, well, don't have a glass of wine, don't eat any tuna,
mm,
don't, right? Don't, there's just like all the don'ts, right? But then what we're saying that it's perfectly safe for pregnant women to inject aluminum, just straight up aluminum
metals,
right into the
yeah.
system. That's safe, right? Inject formaldehyde into your, that's safe. It's like, it's
Mm,
sort of just we've gone off the deep end with like this sort of platform that is so counterintuitive to what you and I grew up with, right? Of just like, we don't mess with pregnant women's bodies. We
Mm,
just don't. They are sacrosanct.
mm,
And,
wow.
so it starts before conception, right? Getting your microbiome intact. It starts probably with saying no to certain things that they're asking you to do during pregnancy, right? Just saying no. Really, really looking into it and researching it on your, like, what is this thing? It's one thing, like, here's the difference. Okay. We're told in pregnancy, don't eat tuna because tuna could have trace amounts of mercury and you don't really want that. You can't, don't drink, don't have a glass of wine. Okay. You have a closed gastrointestinal tract, right? Where a lot of stuff gets filtered out in the gastrointestinal tract.
Mm,
When we are injecting things into pregnant women and developing babies into infants, there's no gastrointestinal tract that is filtering out, right? It is getting injected straight into the system.
mm,
There's nowhere for this stuff to go. I mean, it's like, I don't know how we've ended up here, but somehow we have. And it blows my freaking mind. And then, you had a home birth, I had a home birth, but prior to me having a home birth, I was due to give birth at Los Robles Hospital.
mm,
And I had an OB, he was a man, young, he was fresh, young. I would say the longer I went into my pregnancy, starting around 6 months and then 7 months, I thought, I've got to get out of this hospital.
mm,
I mean, literally at 7 months, I was calling any midwife I could find in my areas, asking if they were available, right? And
mhm.
and I did find a wonderful midwife at a probably around 7.5 months. I mean, it was crazy, right?
Yeah.
Jumps out of like the hospital. I did. And so I could really see the contrast from midwifery care to OB care. It was like very, I had been used to just going in, getting my stomach measured, having a, Doppler sound on my stomach with the ultrasound gel
Mm,
and peeing in a cup and walking out. Nobody put their hands on my actual stomach.
mm.
And then all of a sudden, at
The
seven and
midwives
a
feeling
half
you up.
months, I'm in right. I'm in midwifery care. And the contrast of care
Yeah.
was just it was just unbelievable. Um, we also ended up having a home birth, but it was like I did a flip around and said, I've got to get myself out of this hospital because I have a little bit like you, Kelly, a
Yeah.
little bit of like, anxiety when it comes to the medical community. And I knew that for me, the most comfortable place to be birthing was going to be in my own home,
Mhm.
right? In my own environment. And yeah, that's what we ended up doing. So,
Thank you for sharing that story. I feel like it's so important because I feel like I'm attracting a lot of women that are looking into the more of the midwifery care model of birthing. And then there's a few hospital, but I feel like with a hospital birth, you have to really really prepare. I feel like get that doula and then what is the hospital's rules and policies and there's so much involved and there's some really great people out there that are like really pushing to know how to navigate the hospital and probably a lot of them are being shadow banned or like forced away, right?
mhm,
And because it's kind of like, well, because we do have rights in hospitals and I knew that, which is a whole other story, which I've leaked out and shared. So when I was transferred to the hospital through my home birth transfer, which is a long story. And it actually realized later it didn't really need to happen, but it was very traumatic to go to the hospital and be treated poorly because you were a home birth transfer
Mm.
and at a very high cesarean birth hospital too. And we navigated through, but I signed myself out early. Oh, they did not like that.
Mm.
They said, well, the baby's our property. Hmm. Interesting. Yeah. Yeah. So then I was like, oh, I'll stay for a few hours. I literally stayed there, stare at the, because they wanted to do the hearing test. Fine. But I knew my rights and I kept refusing things. I was like, and then they were fine. The nurses were really nice about it. And then when I was right, give me all the papers. I said, I'm leaving. Give me all the papers. And they sent Child Protective Services the next day, like immediately. This young
Right.
little woman. I go, oh, come on in, have a seat on the couch. And, there was no case because I signed myself out because I knew my rights. And I know a lot of women don't know, they can't get to that place. And it was very scary. I wasn't like nonchalant and I didn't want to have a fight. I didn't want to have a war. I felt so vulnerable. And yet I'm like, okay, this is a deep medical traumatic thing that's literally surfacing up through my firstborn. And then I was like, okay, and not going, there's so much more to the story too. And how I had to navigate and really fight for my space and my intuition, really. And I did. And I wasn't going to let anybody tell me that I had to do something that was against me because my whole body, it just felt like a violation. It was like, this is not my space. I need to leave. I was in literally survival. It was as though I was like in some war-torn country or like on top of a volcano and there's fire spewing. I was in hyper levels of survival because it was terror to me and I
And
needed
this
to
was
leave.
what, like 13 years ago?
Yeah, 13 and a half
And
years
so you
ago.
can only imagine what it's like
I
now.
know, right?
I mean, one of the things that I've learned just going through the evolution of all the stuff, right? Is exactly sort of what you just talked about,
Mm,
which is you have to have so much trust in yourself. And that's a process. It's a journey and a process. And we've been raised to put all of our faith and trust
mm,
in these institutions.
mm,
They know. They know what's best for us and they know what's best for our baby,
mm,
right? Except that when you really get down to the place where you realize that the institutions and the regulatory agencies have been caught and bought by industry, okay, who are they looking out for?
mm,
Okay, once that really settles into your home body, you go through a period where sort of the bottom falls out,
mm,
right? Because you don't trust yourself enough yet. And you don't trust them anymore either. So you've got to go through this process of, getting to the point where
mm,
you have so much trust in yourself and your own intuition. And also, we can't be dummies about it either. We do have to research. We
mhm,
do have to understand what they're doing, you
mm.
know, um, because we have to be able to speak their language, right? It's like
Yes.
if you
Yes.
are in a hospital birth, and there are some situations, obviously, where
Yeah.
that's a necessary situation,
Yeah.
right? I mean, you want to be able to say, no,
Mm,
my infant does not need a
mm,
hepatitis B shot right now.
mhm,
Okay. My infant is not in danger of shooting up heroin or having sex on the preschool, playground.
yeah.
I'm going to decline that. And you have to be able to speak to that,
Mm, mhm,
right? I, so there is this place when, you know, when the bottom falls out,
mhm.
and that's where the trust comes in, where you have to really trust yourself and realize that
Mhm.
like you're going to need to navigate this journey. And we're all self-taught experts, all of us.
I like that. And I want to add to that. So let's say you're navigating through pregnancy, finding a hospital midwife. It's like we are our own intuitive advocates. We are our own, like you said, research can be very helpful for some people. They really need that research. And there's so much here now, right? And there is a community. There are people that are like, yeah, you can do that. You don't have to do all these injections. You don't have to do whatever they're suggesting. You don't have to circumcised. You don't have to do all that, but you have to then sit with yourself. Where is your energy? Who's the connection of you? And I know, like, I realize that, like, how I work is not how other people work. I'm a very feeler and I'm very instinctual. Like, if something drops into me, I don't need to do much research at all. There's some other energy that's a part of me that's like, nope, we're doing this. Like circumcision, which that's gonna be an interesting conversation on Spirit Baby Radio. I'm gonna talk about it. Somebody asked. And it's kind of like my first reaction was no, that I don't need to do any research. It's like
Mhm.
I was like, oh, harm when my baby's born.
Mhm.
Oh no, that doesn't work for me. And so I do feel the new human, the new earth energy that we're coming into that space of just knowing, like that deep knowing, like, you talk about like aluminum in your body and like, yeah, don't eat the salami, but here, like that just blew me. When you said that, just like, oh my God, like I know, like I've heard this, but when you just said that before, it was like, oh my God, like it almost feels like, hello, like, wow, yeah, like what?
Yeah,
Like
it is
what?
like if you went onto the CDC website right now
Yeah.
and you researched what foods do I introduce? How do I introduce food? It's almost comical, right? Because it's
Yeah.
like, you know, basically what they're saying is, well, just be very careful. Like you introduce apples, but don't introduce apples and bananas on the same day. Okay, because that you don't want your baby to have a reaction, right?
Oh my
So,
gosh. Did they really say that?
I mean, yeah, this is like how
Oh
you
my
introduce
gosh.
food. It's like
Wow.
one food at a time, just like be very cautious. But you can take your
Interesting.
2-month-old,
Yeah.
okay, and have something,
What is the
injected.
number up to? What is the injection number up to now? Do you
We're
know?
now, well, from so, yeah, it's
It's
you
scary,
can't even
really.
you can't even
I
make this
know.
up. Okay, I believe right now from birth to 18, right?
Mm.
It's like 75 doses of maybe 18 different things that shall not be named.
Wow.
Okay.
Wow.
Right. When the law went into effect in 1986, right, when they took away immunity from the pharmaceutical industries for
Mm.
injuries, okay, the schedule at the time it was 18 doses of 11 things that shall not be named.
Hmm.
Okay. From birth to 18. Once that law went into effect, the schedule has now become so bloated,
Mm.
right? I mean, the way I look at this is the best business model on the planet,
Mm.
right? You've got what other industry is enjoying liability-free where
That's wild. It's
you can never, ever,
unbelievable.
ever, ever be sued when something goes wrong.
Yeah.
Okay? If your child's permanently damaged or worse, they die, they are untouchable, right? So you've got this liability-free industry where they've just bloated more and more and more of their products onto the schedule that are mandated in certain states in order for your
Mm.
child to receive an education,
Hmm. Hmm.
right? And, you've just watched rates of diseases in kids skyrocket from 1989 on, literally
Yeah. I
skyrocket.
was gonna say that I didn't talk about that, but that was the thing. I've had people come to me for my 4-year-old has an autoimmune disorder, and I'm like, what? Like, is this a
Never
thing?
before.
Yeah.
I actually just put up a post because now the thing that's floating around, right, is like how all
Mm.
the seed oils are bad and how we
Oh
have
yeah,
to
yeah.
okay. Which I'm like, "Ugh, I'm going to put up another post about that because
I
it's
gotta
just
see that.
kind of making me nuts a little bit, which is fine. It's good that we're all talking about bad
Yeah.
food and ultra processed food, and this is a good thing. And
Yeah.
okay. But the irony of it was, and this was the gist of my post because I got to laugh about this, is that I grew up in LA in the 1970s.
Mm,
Okay. And I lived in horrible apartments. Both my parents smoked cigarettes, right? My mother never cooked a meal
mm,
ever. Okay. So I had fast food, processed food, Captain Crunch, Fruity Pebbles and all the things, right? Food that literally glowed in the dark,
mm.
right? I sucked in more secondhand smoke than a chimney stack.
Oh
Okay.
my gosh.
You know what I mean? It was the 70s.
Yeah.
Everybody smoked everywhere.
Wow. Yeah.
And in the 70s in LA, everybody had like leaded gas in their gas tank. So I
Mm,
played in a fog of leaded gas, sucked in more secondhand smoke than a chimney stack, ate hydrogenated, oiled, horrible food, and I never sat in a nut-free classroom.
mm,
Right? I never knew an autistic kid. I never knew a kid that had
mm,
obesity. I never went to a walk for the cure at Dodger Stadium, right?
mm,
With all these kids now that have juvenile diabetes
mm,
and autism and right. Like I never knew a kid that was taking pharmaceuticals.
mhm,
You know what I'm saying? It was like the food was really bad. Granted, we
mm.
didn't have glyphosate. Okay, we didn't have that, but we had really bad food.
Yeah.
I ate really bad food. I mean, what do we not have now? Like nobody smokes in California anymore, so
Yeah.
nobody's
Well,
sucking
it's
in
illegal.
secondhand.
It's illegal and down the
Right.
streets I
But
saw.
everybody smoked.
Yeah.
You went on an airplane, you went in a restaurant, there's everybody smoking. And, it's just like it's just it's almost it's like, okay, it's good that we're talking about ultra processed food, but K let's not forget our medical history,
Yes.
right? The rates of autism in the 1970s was 1 in 10,000, and it's not just
Mm,
because we're better at diagnosing it now. It just isn't.
mm.
They wanna make that claim, "Well, we're better at diagnosing it now." Well, I'm gonna be 54. Show me all the 54-year-olds right now
Oh,
walking
good
around with
point.
diapers and helmets.
And it's really what it comes down to, I feel like we're going to is it's the metals, right? It's the our bodies aren't made to take in our brains, our nervous system.
It's the combination of everything. I mean,
Yeah.
if
The
we talk
environment.
about the thing that we're not supposed to talk about, if we just get back to that for 1 second, right?
We know everybody knows what this is. We can't say what that is because of
We've got to
censorship. We
dance
know
around the
that. We have
thing,
to
but
dance around.
right, we're going to talk about the thing that we're not allowed to talk about for 1 second. But when you look at the excipients, okay, the ingredients that are in these products, well, they pulled the metals out except for aluminum, which is a light metal. Okay, aluminum is just rampant in these products, right? But there's all these other sort of things floating around in there. There's formaldehyde.
Hmm.
There's 2-phenoxyethanol, whatever the hell that is. There's
Hmm.
glutaraldehyde. The way these things are manufactured, they're either manufactured on aborted fetal tissue or animal tissue. They've got to grow
Hmm.
them on something. They've got to have a medium to grow them on something.
Hmm.
They can't ever filter out all of this stuff 100% because then they make the product completely, inactivated. They don't want to inactivate the product.
Hmm.
The whole point of these products is to artificially stimulate our immune system over
Yeah.
and over and over again. So we keep making antibodies to whatever they're trying to quote unquote protect us from. And what are they trying to protect us from?
Hmm. Hmm.
You know, I mean, so right, we're not any healthier. The kids aren't doing any better. We're
Hmm.
actually sicker. The kids are sicker.
Hmm.
So yeah,
Hmm.
I know. I want to
I
end on a
know.
high note, but
Vanessa.
I just don't know
I got
how.
Vanessa going deep, but it's just
Just
so
don't.
it's so insightful, and the power of the energy that you share is so valuable and important because I feel like your power and compassion for it is strong. You've witnessed, you've seen, you've been marching and you've been kind of going deeper into spaces which probably are now hard to find. Do you know what I mean? Like
Right.
everything is being deleted, and this is where of course my part is like, where's your intuition tell you? And I know it's hard to drop in. Some people go, well, but I think when we identify it, like, oh, my intuition says I shouldn't do it, but then this other part of me wants to, it's like, oh, what is that fear? Okay, what is that? It's like, look at it and really start like laying it out before you. It's like, well, I don't want to be sick or I don't want to die. It's like that's the fear, right? But oh, but if you're intuitive and eternal, you have to do that internal kind of inquiry, curiosity, and grounding your energy. This is the most important. I tell men and women, if you are not grounded making decisions, you are going to probably not make the best decision for you and
Mhm.
your family. Embodiment, where's your connection to your body? I don't care if it's dancing, if it's feeling your feet, if it's going out into nature, coming back to your body, whether you're in fertility, pregnancy, or birthing, is like, and having that love for ourselves. Like we're doing the best we can, but I do feel like we can do better. Like
Mm.
we can always do better. So if you're learning new information, new insights and connections, it's like, oh, not like, oh, you suck and I'm gonna like hurt myself, and or get people feel triggered so they get combative. Like, well, I needed that induction, and well, I needed this. And it's like, whoa, I'm not saying you not to, but it's like, can we keep improving where the new earth energy wants to go? Because it's gonna hit harder in this world. It's gonna be pretty like, I know people say things get hard before they get better, but when we know we're eternal, let's just keep it at that. Like, know your light body, know your love connection. And, um, but I feel like I'll have Vanessa, well, we'll do another topic again, but I want you to share, how can people connect with you? Because you work with people, like, they don't have to live by you, right? You work with people everywhere. You offer a lot of different things.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. Definitely like reach out through social media or my website, drvanessapassup.com. And I work with people remotely, or in person, and where we can just sort of take an intake and see what's going on and where we want to go next, right?
Yeah. And any final words that you can share to the community that isn't, maybe they're infertility and they're having a hard time, or they're just struggling through pregnancy? What kind of love message can you share?
Slow down, right? Take your time. I know there's a big push to feel like there's a rush. There's no hurry. Unravel the web of whatever inflammatory situations are going on in your own body, right? And lastly, I'd also just want to say I love what you're doing, Kelly. Um, because when you talk about just the new human that's coming in, right? Um, or how, yeah, you are different. You just like get some intuitive download and you're like, no, right? And that could very well be sort of the new human. Like,
Mm.
no, I don't need to spend 10 years researching this. You know what I mean? Like, I would love to get out of researching this, right? But I kind of can't. Um, but there's something in that that's just so powerful.
Mm.
It really is so powerful to just say, no, I don't have to. I think for people like me or older generations, you know, sort of the Gen X, whatever, I think we were just sort of raised in a different time of
Mm.
respecting authority, you know, don't question authority, respect authority, do what you're told, right? And to just be so, grounded in being able to say, no, I don't need that. My body just told me no, you know?
Mm.
it's so powerful. But yeah, ultimately it's just there's no rush. You can take all the time to sort of unravel what you need to unravel, right? We're all inflamed. I mean, it's just that's how it is. We're living on the planet. The environment's harsh, and we do need to sort of slow down and get back and connect into nature and connect with one another and get off of our screens and move our bodies and eat good food and drink good water and, you know, yeah.
I was going to say, and celebrate each other and laugh and play. I want to add to
Have
your amazing
joy. I
list.
know. I know.
I
Have
love it.
fun.
Hmm.
Whatever the thing is that you can like, for me, it's music, I swear. In
Mm.
like we'll get in the car and and I'll be sort of grouchy and grumpy or whatever I'm going through, like just like my mental monkey mind. And she'll say, "What song do you want me to put on, Mom?" And I'm like, I don't care. I swear within 20 seconds of the song coming on, I'm like a different human.
You're like belting it out,
Like,
dancing. I love
I
it.
just told her yesterday, I'm like, can you believe what this does to my spirit? It
Yeah.
like completely lights me up.
Oh, I
I get
love
a
that.
completely different human. So yeah, I guess the other piece of it too is like whatever you can find that lights you up,
Yeah,
how to find joy, how to have fun, how
absolutely.
to have fun ultimately. Yeah, let's end with that. Have fun.
Have fun. Well, thank you. Thank you so much, Vanessa, sister, for being here. And I feel like there's going to be more of your energy in this Spirit Baby vibes place.
Thank you for having me, Kelly. I love you so much.
Oh,
And this
I
was
love you
just so
too.
fun.
And I want to thank everybody for joining episode 198, Holistic Healing for Conception into Birthing, creating healthy mothers, babies before life. Thank you for joining Spirit Baby Radio with your host, me, Kelly Meehan. Please join my community and stay in touch with monthly energy rants, Spirit Baby poetry, and get access to Spirit Baby 101 with tips and practices at my newsletter at newearthchildren.com. And join me on Instagram with lives at Spirit Baby Medium, and join the Mighty Networks, the Spirit Baby Collective membership, and Motherhood to Mediumship. Remember, you are the heart that holds communication, and it is your time to connect. Come share in the great shift of your mind and the true spirit of your heart with Spirit Baby Communication.